The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
Welcome, Giles Goalie Podcast. I am your host, Giles Farrell. Across the table from me is Ben Remington.
Hello.
Ben, we are back at Unnamed Bar and Grill in St. Paul. Or I'm sorry, Unnamed Pub in St. Paul.
Unnamed City Pub. Yes.
Unnamed Hockey City Pub.
Yeah, and we were treated with some wild representation for the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah, Andrew Burnett flashing his Canadian hat on Canada Day.
Yes, he did.
And a happy Canada Day to all.
To all three of our Canadian listeners.
Oh, yeah, all Canadian listeners who celebrate. Good for you.
Uh-huh.
Hey, it is Free Agent Frenzy, and we do have a lot to cover. All the news this week literally coming today for your Minnesota Wild, because why would there ever be any other news during the week?
No.
But to recap the Free Agent Frenzy that we just sat through and was pretty much done by the time free agency opened at 11 a.m., which was weird.
Free agency starts at 11, ends at 11:07.
Yeah. Everyone was signed at 9:30.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Right.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Somebody should just cry collusion.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this before with your friend / hockey insider or hockey HF Boards enthusiast, Graham. And just like the fact that nobody's ever offer sheeted, the fact that teams and players 100% across the board are clearly exchanging numbers during that week, like how silly the whole process kind of is, you know, like isn't the NHL just the best?
It's bad.
It is.
Let me tell you why it's bad. Every year, we hear from your hockey insiders that free agency or trades are going to be active.
Yeah.
Heading into free agency. We see no trades. We are always told that something has weirdly hung up the market.
Oh.
Like this year, weird, was John Tavares holding up the market.
Right.
Last year, it was the Golden Knights holding everyone at ransom for the market.
Yeah.
Like, maybe we're being fed these ridiculous lies. I mean, I don't doubt that the hockey insiders are telling us what they're told. I'm just doubting that the people inside the organizations that are telling them this are actually being honest.
I'm not quite as cynical about it as you are. I think that
Give in.
I think that organizations do think they will make trades. Like if you asked Paul Fenton a week ago, hey, do you think you're going to get a trade done in the next week? He'd be like, oh, yeah, of course. I mean, I'd be shocked if I didn't get one done in the next week. And here we are a week later, and nothing happened. And I don't think that would be him lying. Like if he told Russo last Monday, hey, I think I'm going to get a trade done in the next 5 days, and Russo reports that, I don't think anybody in that situation is lying. I just think they're, I don't want to say like stupidly, but they're overly optimistic. Like they think that something can get done, and it takes two to tango, and you know that's a lot easier said than done. It's kind of a real pain in the ass getting trades done in the NHL. But this year, you know, I'm with you on the frustration.
NHL general managers are the worst.
Like if the marquee trade of this summer ends up being Domi for Galchenyuk, like that. I mean, not that that's the worst trade ever made or anything, or like you know that they're not okay players, but like that's it. That's the marquee trade of this summer. Like, yikes!
Woof. Like it just there's no reason for it. The salary cap had a significant increase.
Right.
Like, and don't feed me this line of garbage that John Tavares was holding up the market. Okay, 5 teams were legitimately in on John Tavares.
The other 26.
And what are you other 26 teams doing? Like, get with it. Like, let's go. Like, I don't know. NHL GMs are just full of crap, and they overvalue their own assets. Like, everyone does it. Everyone across the board. This wasn't exclusively to the Minnesota Wild and Chuck Fletcher. Like, and the other thing, it comes back to what I said a few weeks ago on the podcast, is too many teams have assets that are untradeable. Like, too many long contracts just sitting on the books. And this just runs back into my theory that NHL contract terms need to decrease the max length.
Yeah.
Like the NBA does it. 5 years. Perfect length. Brian McDonough signs an extension on July 1 at 7 years. My first thought is, woof.
Yeah.
Like, why? Like,
Yeah.
no, it's too long. Like, too many untradeable assets, and then the overvaluing of assets you already have. It just makes for no trades, and this is what we've seen. We've seen no trades, and honestly, like, I just don't get it. And maybe this speaks to why the same, like, 4 teams continuously win the Stanley Cup in this league. It just, I don't know. It's frustrating. Like, you want to see moves. Like, you just watch the insanity that is, like, an NBA offseason with all the moves, and I don't know. It seems nice, like, having players actually move around and whatever.
Yeah.
I'm barking up a tree here, but
I think one of the things that maybe held this summer back, I think someone in the Oilers organization shut off Peter Chiarelli's phone.
and they just cut the line.
Yeah, I think they called up Sprint and they were like, "Hey, we're deactivating Peter's phone.
Well,
don't tell him."
If you already have Sprint, then that probably explains why nobody's gotten a hold of him. He just has terrible service.
I went with Sprint because it's cheap and terrible, so that's why.
Yikes.
Not sponsored.
Okay, so actually, to recap, free agent frenzy on July 1st.
That's the one.
Sorry, it was so, the temperature was so cool today. I actually did mistake it for January. But anyway, first off, Minnesota Wild early Sunday morning signed defenseman Greg Pateryn.
Mm-hmm.
Pateryn?
I think it's Pateryn.
To a 3-year contract. He previously was with the Dallas Stars.
Mm-hmm.
I basically will slot in on the third pair of the defense.
Oh.
I should have probably had this readily available.
He's
for contract details,
32.
but I don't.
It was 3 years,
Here it
7.75.
is.
I know this because I wrote the
Yes.
story.
3 years, $6.75 million.
Oh, God damn it, that's wrong. So I know it was 2.25 a season, so that's not bad. I mean, that's not a bad cap hit. Like we were talking about before, the term is not long. I mean, nobody's going to complain about a 3-year contract, but it is a little bit eyebrow raising to me because it's like you're basically saying in 3 years' time you won't have a single right-handed defenseman ready from Iowa. Like, especially Louis Belpedio comes to mind because it's like, when is he going to get in if you've got this guy signed for enough money to make it worth your while to keep him on the third line for the next 3 years? Certainly we don't expect Philip Johansson to be ready in that time because he's 18 freaking years old and probably not all that good. But it is interesting to me, the 3 years part, because it's like, well, is he a guy that they end up buying out at the end of that second year? Like, not. Hopefully he's better than that.
When the Tyler Ennis buyout clears out,
right.
there you go. There's your next one.
Hopefully he's better than that. Hopefully they don't have to buy him out. But I could see a situation where they do.
Pateryn had 13 points, 73 games with the Dallas Stars. Set career highs in games played, assists, points, time on ice, penalty minutes, shots on goal, block shots, hits, all last season, 2017-18. Sounds like a pretty decent guy to plug in on your third line.
Yeah.
And I saw some kind of eyebrows were raised as to why the Stars didn't re-up him for what he ended up costing the Minnesota Wild. So hopefully this turns out to be a pretty good deal on their end. And kind of like you said, that kind of shows to believe that they maybe don't see anyone coming up in the next couple of years outside of Louis Belpedio. But maybe that's a good thing to allow the prospects like Louis Belpedio to kind of develop a little bit more in the AHL, something Tom Fenton heavily believes in.
Yeah.
Tom Fenton, Paul Fenton, Tom Curvers, Paul Fenton.
Yeah.
That's all in there.
We got to create some kind of anagram or some kind of combination like Felvine. But yeah, to your point, yeah, make Belpedio earn his spot. And the Stars thing, I mean, quite honestly, who knows what the situation was, but could have been them trying to keep some cap space free for a certain big fish that was in the pond this summer. So maybe that explains it. Maybe that's a reasonable explanation where they just thought they couldn't afford him because they were scraping and scrounging together every dollar they could for one John Tavares.
Another free agent Minnesota Wild signed on July 1. They came to terms with forward J.T. Brown, the Burnsville native. J.T. Brown on a 2-year contract, $1.375 million. Divide that up by 2 years. So whatever the hell the math checks out to.
It wasn't even either. It was like $750 1 year and like $625 the next year or something like that.
28-year-old, 7 points between Tampa Bay and Anaheim last year, but was a relatively significant figure in Tampa Bay's bottom six for couple years previous to moving to Anaheim last year.
Big enough, and then he was waived in Tampa last year and ended up in Anaheim. And it's a depth signing. I don't know that he plays a whole ton of minutes. I don't know. I'm not really all that enthused about him playing a ton of minutes, to be honest. But I guess we'll see.
He is another Bulldog
Well,
joining
there's
the Minnesota Wild ranks.
Yeah.
No longer a team of Gophers. It's a team of Bulldogs. What the hell is this?
Well, it's him and Stalock right now. They both could end up making a trip down I-35.
Where'd all my Gophers go?
I don't know. Tom just signed in Detroit. Hey.
We'll come to him later.
Yeah.
We had a lot of Gophers on this team. Now we have none. I am sad. Okay. I'm all right with this move, I guess. Like J.T. Brown is a good depth guy, has good playoff experience. I'm highly entertained by him and his wife's Twitter. So that's always a bonus. I love those who are a little more interactive on Twitter.com and provide a little humor. It's always nice, but
humor's good.
That's all I got.
Yeah.
So
no, and it's low risk, and that's Panarin isn't super low risk, but the other signings that they made were all very low risk. So Panarin, like I said, 3 years, 2.25, not crazy, but the other signings they made. That we'll get to, all low risk, all very low risk. And I think that's an important thing to remember if you're very disappointed in the signings today, which people are, and I understand that. But there isn't a whole lot that the Wild are putting out there on the line. I mean, nobody signed a 7-year deal today.
Speaking of low risk, Minnesota Wild signed goaltender Andrew Hammond.
Yes.
Otherwise known as the Hamburglar.
Oh, I'm so excited.
To a 1-year, 2-way contract, essentially going to be pushing Alex Stalock for the backup goaltender position. Last season, 3.21 goals against average, .904 save percentage. With the AHL affiliate of the Ottawa Senators and the Colorado Avalanche. He actually had couple of games with the Avalanche last year, .933 save percentage, .262 goals against average.
Yeah, he was very good in the playoffs, and
that was in the playoffs. I'm sorry, that's what I'm.
He played one regular season game with the Avs. I think it was the final game of the season. So then he played a couple of playoff games. It was very good.
He's most notably remembered for his run with the Senators a couple of years ago when he posted a .158 goals against average, .949 save percentage, and 2 shutouts in his first 15 NHL starts, dating from February 18th to March 23rd of 2015, and they essentially ran the Senators right into the playoffs
Yeah, pretty much.
before they were pretty much dismissed immediately. But
Robblety.
a 30 years old, another, like you said, another low-risk guy, but going to push Alex Stalock for the backup goaltender position,
Yeah.
which you are all about.
Very excited about it. And that's something we both talked about last week. Was,
Did we?
yeah, well, you may have heard of this, and I may have tweeted about it later, and I may have pissed somebody off. But yeah, I mean, it's a good move. It's a very good move because Hammond is the type that can get hot, and I don't think that it's going to happen necessarily. It's no guarantee at all, but I think that he can win the job over Stalock. And I think that you give him certain points, you give him certain pockets of playing time, and he can push Dubnyk a little bit. I'm not saying he's going to take Dubnyk's job. I certainly don't think that much of him. But something I covered in my very, very quick write-up today when they signed him, Andrew Hammond's NHL save percentage is .923.
That's good.
That's pretty good. Like, yeah, he did not look great in the AHL last year. But, I mean, a .923 save percentage, how many goalies have a career .923 save percentage that have played, roughly a season's worth of games in the NHL like he has? Not many. Not many at all. And so, yeah, I mean, the results were very mixed for him last year. But, he almost upset the Predators single-handedly in the first round last year. And, so it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see which Hamburglar the Wild get. If they get a good one, he'll be up here, and maybe he'll make more than the customary 15 starts the backup usually gets. Or maybe he'll end up in Iowa if they get the bad one.
And then the next move, Minnesota Wild signed forward Eric Fehr to a 1-year, $1 million contract. He played last season with the San Jose Sharks. Is that right? Yes. Played last year with the Sharks, 14 games, just
He was a
3
deadline
goals
deal.
and assists, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was.
He was
Played
buried in
4
the
games
AHL,
previous
actually.
with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, he was
where
buried in the AHL. Actually played for the Gulls, the Anaheim AHL team, and then was
That's right.
moved.
I remember
it
he
was
was-
a bizarre deal. It was
He
like
was
a,
in one of the games I covered in Iowa.
it was like a salary cap oddity type deal where Toronto couldn't really call him up or use him.
basically one of Bruce Boudreau's old favorites from his days in Washington.
Yeah, and him, and then we'll get to Hendricks, but I don't know. I'm not wild about this signing, no pun intended, but
Hey-o.
yeah, it's just it's not fair, no pun intended.
Wow.
I don't know. I would have much. We talked about this. How much would you have rather seen Riley Nash for $2.4 million? Like, good Lord, I'll take that all day.
On Riley Nash.
An extra $1 million, and you get Riley Nash instead of Eric freaking Fehr. Like, yeah, I'm taking that every day of the week. So I don't know. Whatever. It is what it is. Boudreau obviously likes him. I guess it's a good thing that we're seeing Boudreau guys come in through Fenton, because that means that at least those two parties are talking. There's not some caustic relationship because John Anderson was let go, like some people might lead you to believe, or Ryan Suter probably isn't involved somehow, like some people probably would like to believe. Yeah, it is what it is. Eric Fehr is going to be their fourth-line center. That's assuming Luke Cunnin doesn't play center or doesn't carve out some time. I guess we'll find out.
Speaking of old Bruce Boudreau guys, Minnesota Wild signed forward Matt Hendricks to a 1-year, $700,000 contract.
Yeah.
Another player that Boudreau had in Washington. Also, apparently, last 2 years he was at Edmonton, at Winnipeg. Apparently, very good guy in the room, will push people to play better, apparently.
Great.
So
they're paying like a fourth assistant coach $700,000 in a roster spot.
yeah,
Cool.
just 700 loose G's. No, no big deal. Last season with the Winnipeg Jets, 60 games, 13 points, 39 penalty minutes. So
Well, for that much money, they could hire 7 jersey consultants, Giles.
Or they could just split that money between 2 jersey consultants. And then we could actually afford better equipment. Oh, did I say that out loud?
Yeah, well.
I don't know. Like, that's... Before we get to the last couple of signings, which are pretty much just for Iowa, but
Yeah.
The bottom 6 of the Minnesota Wild has been very much tweaked here on July 1st. However, it's the other part of the lineup that has not been tweaked, which is what's concerning. And we'll come to this in a little bit, but not a lot of optimism flying around at St. Paul, Minneapolis, anyone who associates themselves with the Minnesota Wild. Like, it's nice to bring back Minnesotans, JT Brown, Matt Hendricks. Like, I get it, great, but
Not even Gophers.
you're just signing guys for depth, and the bottom 6 of the Wild was not good last year, and I would have argued there might have been some better options out there than what they did, but it is what it is now, so you hope they've made the right call.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think a whole lot of people are expecting a whole lot to happen on July 1st for the Wild. At least people with a brain that have been following things recently. It's still disappointing. You would have liked to see them go after a better free agents, I guess. Like we said,
it wasn't a great free agent class,
No,
so
no,
I'll
no,
say
not at all.
that. So, I mean, maybe just signing guys for depth might turn out to be better, but
right. But like we said, Riley Nash would have been a great signing. We didn't like where Jay Beagle's contract ended up. I don't think I would have liked to see the Wild sign that deal. But, signing a guy like that would have been nice. I don't know, Eric Fair, it just, yeah. I mean, if you're going to trot him out every night of the week, along with JT Brown and or Matt Hendricks, like, that leaves a lot to be desired in 2018 in the NHL. So, I don't know. Maybe there's more coming, and depth guys are good to have. Don't get me wrong. You can't go wrong having guys with NHL experience in your organization. These are guys that, even though they're not on two-way contracts, you can probably send them down to Iowa, and it shouldn't be that big of a deal. But still not, nothing to be excited about, nothing to be overly happy about. You still have probably your more important job to do, which is locking up Dumba and Zucker. And Godfrey maybe make a trade somewhere in there.
good luck with that.
Yeah.
Other 2 signings on July 1, Wild sign defenseman Matt Bartkowski, 1-year, 2-way contract, $650,000, plays the NHL, $350K for the AHL. 18 games with Calgary last year, and then obviously spent a little bit of time in the minor leagues.
Mhm.
So I,
Yeah.
whatever, just kind of a journeyman. Boston, Vancouver, Calgary. Has a few Stanley Cup playoff games under his belt, but it's whatever. That's for more depth in Iowa.
Yeah.
And then the other one is forward Mike Liambas. I hope I'm saying that right.
Sure.
2-year, 2-way contract. That's it. And it's depth, and as we alluded to last year, the Wild did pretty good with their depth signings last year on July 1. So you hope the case is pretty similar this year, in the fact that they just have some guys who, if they needed to when they're in dire straits, can plug into the lineup for a couple games until players return. So that's all you're hoping for out of those guys.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing certainly to get excited about. I don't know if did you mention the Sealer signing?
We're getting there.
Okay.
I guess we're going there.
Well, that happened today, too, so I don't know if you were...
Yeah, Nick Seeler signs an extension with the Minnesota Wild. He was a restricted free agent, but they get him locked up a 3-year contract that is worth $2.175 million split over those 3 years. So take that for whatever that adds out to. Maybe I should have the page.
715
page in front of me.
I think. Somewhere
725
725
over 3 years.
So yeah, I mean that's a deal. If you don't like the Hammond signing, which is fine, I think this is probably the only other thing that you can really get excited about today because everyone who saw Sealer play last year in the limited sample that we got liked what they saw, and I mean you're locking him up for a kind of a bargain basement price for the next 3 seasons.
I'm genuinely surprised a third year was tacked on that. Like I could see that deal for 2 years, but the fact that a third year got added in there is kind of incredible, and I think we talked about before the show that might turned out to be pretty amazing given what we've seen out of a Sealer so far.
I mean, even if he's just the third pair guy for the entire 3 years, like that's not bad. If you're getting a good third pair guy for $750 or $725, hell yeah.
No, it looks like it's a one-way deal essentially. So that's probably the reason maybe a third year got added. So,
and you got to think that third pair job on the left side is his to lose. I mean, Carson Soucy, didn't kind of had mixed results. Gustav Olofsson fell off the face of the earth, and there isn't really a whole lot of other competition for him. So you got to think that he goes into camp with essentially that job not being given to him, but certainly expecting for him to take it.
Other news this last week: Ryan Murphy re-signs with the Minnesota Wild, as well as Kyle Rao re-signs with the Minnesota Wild.
There's a gopher.
But he's in Iowa, so it
with clues
doesn't count. Yeah, there's probably like my 2 most favorite Gophers from like the last 5 years. If you're not counting Casey Middlestad, bless him, who's out in Buffalo now.
Poor guy.
But so that's the Wild news for free agency and signings and whatnot in the last week. The other bit of Wild news came on June 30th. Forward Tyler Ennis was finally bought out. His cap hit next year will be $2.16 million, and then 2019-20, $1.21 million on the books. Wild did not have a buyout on their books for next season, so makes sense to free up the $4.6 million Ennis was going to have on the books to give them a little more flexibility, maybe sign another depth guy or two before they try to sign crucial restricted free agents Jason Zucker, Matt Dumba.
Yeah.
So
and all these moves leave them with, I think we said about $13 million, $12 million in cap space.
Yeah, it's about 13.
Depending on who makes the team, and then how much they make. So, that I think that's probably just enough. I mean, I think Dumba and Zucker are probably going to come in somewhere around the 10 to 11 million mark combined. You could kind of go multiple ways with it depending on the term they get. But that leaves them about $1 million to $2 million kind of wiggle room, and that is the room that was freed up by Ennis. Ennis was freed up, I think it was 2.2 or something like that. With his buyout minus or his cap hit minus his buyout. So, I mean, you got to have that breathing room. As we saw last year, that breathing room is very important. If you don't have it, you're going to wish you had it by the time, by the time November rolls around.
I threw this out on Twitter that a couple of weeks ago I wrote maybe the Wild should look at not buying out Tyler Ennis, but given the proposed trades that were reported on, with the Wild trying to toss in Tyler Ennis, I'm very okay with them just buying him out instead of trying to throw him in like the dead duck that he is, like Bobby Ryan is right now with Erik Karlsson. So I would obviously like them to just try and work around it and get whatever out of the last year, but it obviously didn't work with Bruce Boudreau and him last year, so I'll be fine with it, I guess, as long as the cap continues to stay where it's at or go up maybe a little bit next year. But if you can figure out a way to wiggle around it financially, fine. I guess I'll give Paul Fenton a little benefit of the doubt, because Chuck Fletcher would just run himself right up to the cap and have these buyouts on the cap that would limit, call-ups and junk. So it is what it is.
Well, the thing with Ennis is that buyout was always looming. Whether it was Ennis or Pominville, that buyout was always looming, right? So, and Ennis ended up saving them $1 million versus Pominville was kind of the crux of the deal last year. But you look forward to this team, and Is there a contract right now that you think will be bought out? I don't think there is.
No.
I mean, even, Devin Dubnyk, if he falls off the face of the earth, maybe. I think he's got 2 years left, 3 years left in his deal. I don't think he's bought out. Like I said, quite honestly, I mean, it's entirely possible that Panarin gets bought out for his third season, but it's not like he makes an exorbitant amount. That wouldn't make a ton of sense. I mean, you'd only buy him out because the penalty would be so light you would barely even notice. And there isn't a contract that you look at where you're like, oh, I mean, you've got Koivu for this season and next at 5.5. You've got Stahl for this season at 3.5. There isn't a bad contract on the books anymore. I mean, aside from the two really bad ones.
Now you mentioned Eric Stahl. I'm kind of curious. Nobody's really talked about him a whole lot outside of him being asked for his no trade list last week, and I mean, is there even a thought in the front office of giving him some sort of an extension? Or are they just going to kind of let this play out next year and see what happens with the team? And if they're not looking like they're going to hit the playoffs, maybe they ship him out and get some assets in return. I guess we'll see, but
kind of looks like it.
For as good as Eric Stahl was last year, it's really interesting to see what will happen with him now as he enters the final year of his contract. And if you're not going to bring him back the next year, then you would like to get something back for him, unlike other free agents that we've seen here recently. So, kind of an interesting storyline to follow.
I think giving him an extension that would be extremely lucrative would kind of be. I mean, you're kind of rolling the roulette wheel again, kind of thing. Because his contract right now is amazing, but that's not going to happen next time around. So I can understand why they're not falling over themselves to give him an extension.
So we've seen the Wild make their moves in free agency. They haven't really made any trades as of yet. Now as we kind of move past July 1st, where you usually don't see a lot of trades, you're kind of left wondering what's next, because they have $13 million, depending on how you look at it, in cap space, and most of that's going to go to Jason Zucker, Matt Dumba. And I found this quote on Sunday from Paul Fenton pretty interesting when he met with the media after all the signings, and he basically said, if we go into the seasons with the acquisitions and the, quote, character type, quote, signings we've made, then I'm okay with it. But he also added, if it makes sense to improve us, then I'm certainly going to look at it, referencing trades. But if I'm reading the tea leaves out of that, that maybe indicates they're going to go into next training camp with the roster that they have. I mean, that could certainly just be window dressing for him trying to cover up a trade he's trying to make, but I don't know. I mean, I have a tough time believing a new general manager would want to pull the plug on any kind of a major trade without actually seeing a player live in action. So it could be, until next year before we see him actually make a major player trade.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. And like I said before, I mean, he probably hasn't made any moves just because they're hard to make. I mean, it's really hard. If you've ever tried to pull off a trade in a fantasy football or baseball league, you know how difficult it can be. And that's just a bunch of jack-offs, at Buffalo Wild
Jabronis.
Wings. Yeah, exactly. It's a bunch of undesirable names. But, that's just it's hard. And then you're dealing with NHL GMs and the spotlight is on, and I'm not saying there's any excuses for it, and it's certainly going to be disappointing for, I think, all Wild fans if they don't make any kind of shakeup whatsoever. But, I mean, looking back to last season, how much better off would they have been had they not made any moves last year? They would have been much better off, as I kind of covered in an article I wrote right after they made a bunch of stupid moves. So I don't want to see moves for moves' sake. I want to see moves that make sense. It's disappointing that we're not seeing them, but, it's better than bad moves.
kind of painted themselves into a corner when they said, they have to make some tweaks to the roster.
Yeah.
And, it sounds like from what I've heard, teams are kind of, undervaluing their assets because they know they have to make a move. So I guess credit to where it's due that the team isn't exactly just making a trade right now, as you said, just to make a trade. They're trying to find a right deal, but not exactly the greatest look when you kind of change out regimes to make some moves and get some fresh blood on this team. But
Yeah.
I will say, if this is the roster that goes into training camp, I will say that I like how the defense looks, especially the third pair. I'll give them that in front of Dubnyk, which should be really good. And we threw that out there, but Panarin probably brings a little bit more physicality to the front of the net than maybe Wild fans have been accustomed to the last few years. And they're always clamoring for it, but not everyone can be Chris Pronger. As for the forwards, you reshuffled the bottom six, but I'll just compare that to reshuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic. Matt Hendricks, Eric Fehr, JT Brown, I'm sure they're all great guys, and I have no doubt of that. But honestly, it's the on-ice production that counts, and I just don't know if you're going to get that with these guys. So forward is still very questionable for me, and the Wild still badly lack that kind of game-breaking player. And we didn't hit this last week, but Artemi Panarin has suddenly become a hot topic in trade, quote-unquote, rumors, as he declined to sign an extension with the Columbus Blue Jackets, or even talk with them, as he apparently is looking to go play in a bigger market. I think that would be ideally a player the Wild should try to acquire, but given what we know about Panarin already, trying to get him might not be the best move, as much as we all would love that. But if he's looking to play in a huge, gigantic market, then, Minneapolis St. Paul isn't exactly going to fulfill his needs.
I heard that was mostly BS because, they talked about his girlfriend modeling, and it's she hasn't done it in 3 years. Or?
I still think he, from what I heard, he still wants to play in a big market, but I think it got tied to his girlfriend wanting to be a model, but it's not tied to that. She hasn't modeled in a while. He still wants to play in a big market.
Sure.
But
maybe he wants to play for a franchise that's won a playoff series.
But
which would be everyone except for the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Literally
every franchise has won a playoff series except for the Columbus Blue Jackets.
What a sad organization.
Yeah, we're not doing much better here.
I don't know. It's hard to get excited about what the Wild would be bringing back at forward, and really not making any moves fuels that fire. But
at the same time, I don't want to go too nuts with pumping people full of optimism, because Lord knows I'm not full of optimism. But
no,
just look at the injuries this team had last year and the ineffectiveness from that. Look at the year Charlie Coyle had because of injuries. Look at the year Nino had because of injuries. Look at Zach Parese's final numbers because of injuries. It's not out of the realm of possibility to think that this team could be better next season, just 100% for the fact that they might be healthier. That's not to say they don't have injuries next year, because I'm sure they will, but they kind of got hit with them pretty hard last year, relatively speaking, and if you can get a fully healthy year out of Coyle, maybe he does turn a corner. If you can get a fully healthy year out of Nino, maybe he finally becomes the game-breaking offensive talent that we think he can become. Who knows? Who knows what happens? There's so many possibilities out there. It's really hard to doom yourself to saying it's going to be exactly like last season, just because the roster is mostly like last season. There are changes, and there are circumstances that change. So I don't know. I'm not saying that I'm on the side of Paul Fenton not making any moves, or that I don't want him to, but I don't want to see Charlie Coyle shipped out of town for some crappy fourth-line grinder just for the sake of making a trade. That doesn't make any sense. So you know, at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for your team.
No. Right. So to recap, another bit of news last week. Tom Curvers was officially introduced as the assistant general manager. Not the assistant to the general manager.
That's Brett Flair now.
No shit.
He's getting coffee.
But
That's mean.
no, Curvers spent the last few years in Tampa Bay, kind of serving on their staff, but essentially another set of eyes, and I guess he scouted the Wild pretty frequently, so he has seen this team quite often and probably has a few ideas as to what maybe they should do going forward, but he's also a native of Bloomington, Minnesota, so Fenton bringing in one of us.
One of us.
Also of note, you can play Tom Curvers and NHL Open Ice, the arcade game. So I'm going to put that out there. I was disappointed. I went to my friend Graham's place today, play some Open Ice as Tom Curvers, and we got there, the power was out. So lovely tree branch fell on some power lines thanks to the lovely storm we had, which did cool the temperature down quite considerably.
Thank God. It was not fun living here the last 2 days.
No. So I don't know really what to say. It's an assistant general manager, so basically everyone in the front office is having their roles kind of redefined. So take that for what it's worth.
Yeah.
So NHL free agency as a whole, we saw John Tavares sign with the Toronto Maple Leafs, not the New York Islanders. 7 years, $77 million, all of which is essentially signing bonus money.
Right.
So
yeah, it's funny.
I alluded to that last week on the podcast where I was like, I'd love for him to go to Toronto. I said on a year contract just to watch it kind of Twitter meltdown, but he signed 7 years with the Maple Leafs. And then the creative Twitter photo where he tweets out a photo of himself sleeping in Toronto Maple Leafs bedspread. I can do that too. Like, we can see how many likes I get. I can have a photo of me sleeping in the Mighty Ducks bed sheets and see how many likes that gets.
I don't think me sleeping on Ninja Turtles bed sheets is going to get any likes at all.
No. The Mighty Ducks will get a few likes because the Mighty Ducks.
Also because you have twice as many followers as I do.
I'm not bragging about it. Anyway, so even with the Tavares signing, like I talked about this before the show too, like I'm looking at all these deals. I don't really like any of them. Like there's the only good deal was the Riley Nash deal.
Right.
Otherwise,
and the Tavares deal is great if you have the room, but you know, I mean, how long before that contract looks bad? You know, as dynamic and amazing as he is right now, that contract is going to be a burden to that team at some point.
And the length of contracts again just needs to decrease. It's got to go down. Like, come on. I alluded to Ryan McDonough's 7-year extension. Like, sure, first couple of years that's going to look good, but a few years after, no, woof. Like, it's going to be bad. Like. There's no long-term contract being signed unless it's like Connor McDavid where you're legitimately going, that's a good deal.
Yeah.
Like, that's just how it is. And that's why the NHL needs to figure out a way to reduce the contract length on the next CBA. Players won't like it, but it just, like I said, it just adds to it just doesn't make for trades and the flexibility to make those trades. Like, it just doesn't create movement.
Right. And like I said, you know, there's plenty of example. I mean, players won't like it, but it's going to open up that same amount of money isn't going away. Like, everyone's going to spend roughly what they're going to spend to the cap. And so reducing the amount of years.
Carolina.
Unless you're Carolina. Which it doesn't matter how long the years are anyway. Like that. So teams are going to spend what they're going to spend anyway. So if they don't have that 6th or 7th year, that just ends up being an absolute albatross for them, which means they're going to spend that money on another player. So it's not like that money is leaving the union. So as much as it's going to be stupidly fought against, and I'm sure people make arguments of how the owners need to be helped against themselves. That money's still going to go to the players at the end of the day. So I don't know what the big deal is.
Any other NHL free agency thoughts? Because I could sit here and tell you why free agency is terrible. But
it was a whole lot of nothing, and it's we talked about the silly collusion where everyone has facts and figures ironed out long before the noon Eastern deadline today, and how ridiculous that is. And it's just like, I don't know. It, like you said, with the length of contracts and the pseudo collusion going on, like it's such a circus that doesn't need to be as goofy as it is.
I want to say this on John Tavares. I have a few thoughts that just kind of collected in my head. Like, first of all, like, I don't have anything against John Tavares for taking the time to make this decision. Like,
right.
It is well within his right to do that. Like,
Yeah.
he is of no obligation to tell the New York Islanders anything.
Right.
As to what some Islanders fans are saying. And for him to, like, go home and play for the team he loved as a kid, like, think about that for a minute. Like, think about the team you loved most as a kid and think, like, if you ever got the chance to play for them, like, would you take that? Like as a kid, like, if I ever got the chance to, like, put on the Mighty Ducks sweater, not the Ducks, the Mighty Ducks. If I ever got to put on the Mighty Ducks uniform, I would jump on that in a hot minute. Like, I wasn't old enough for the North Stars.
Right.
So, the Mighty Ducks, we all know this, would have been my, like, I'd jump on that in a hot minute. Like, it just, I think we've all gotten really, like, spoiled with how loyal NHL players are to the team that drafted them.
Sure.
And if you want to go play for somebody else, that is well within your right. I don't blame you for doing that. Take the money and go with it.
Yeah.
You don't get to play this game forever.
Right.
You don't get to make that money forever.
Going home is such an, like, I don't know how people underrate that part of this. Yeah, and Wyshynski tweeted it today. He said, as a Devils fan who watched Parise go home, there's nothing you can do. Like, how, people can boo Ryan Suter all they want in Nashville until he dies, but what are you going to do? How are you going to fault somebody for wanting to play closer to home? Yeah. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's just like, it's so petty of fans to be upset about that kind of stuff. But that's typical fan behavior. So, and
speaking of fans, like Islanders fans, very upset with John Tavares. This hatred is misplaced.
Yeah.
Like, Larry Brooks, the Hall of Fame columnist for the New York Post, covers the Rangers, wrote a piece today that is very dead on, and when he puts the blame on the Islanders' ownership and front office for letting this get to where it is.
Yeah.
And that is exactly who you should be sending your hate mail to. You shouldn't be burning your John Tavares jersey.
Morons.
You shouldn't be sending your hate tweets at John Tavares. You should be sending that directed at the New York Islanders front office. Like, they let this get to where it was. They let Garth Snow have the helm for way too many years. Too many years, as I said before the show. Like, if you fire Garth Snow last year and offer some hope of change to John Tavares, he probably signs an extension because, as he said, like, it came down to the Leafs and the Islanders. Like, he loved playing for the Islanders, but the appeal of the Maple Leafs got to him more.
Right.
Like, if you offered John Tavares that glimpse of hopes last year, he probably takes it. Like, Garth Snow wasting away 9 seasons of John Tavares as your top-line center, like, just adds to a franchise history that is already full of horrible mistakes.
Yeah.
Horrible missteps. It's such misplaced hatred at the player. Like, hate the people involved who let it get that far.
Yeah. No, I would totally agree, and it's just it's so silly because it's like,
my lord.
Yeah, I saw that too.
It's just, sorry, somebody walked
quite
by
the show going by
in a full-on, like, onesie that just had Canadian Leafs all over it.
But it was kind of funny. One of our favorite Twitter follows, Pete Blackburn, today, he said, "How ironic is it that Islander fans are mad at John Tavares for wasting his time, for him wasting the Islanders' time, when it's like the Islanders wasted a long time of John Tavares' very good career. Like, he could have actually won something at some point in there somewhere. He could have actually been on a team worth an F, but instead he stayed with the Islanders for this long as they piddled away his entire 20s, and now you're mad at him for leaving to go to a team that looks like it's, very close to winning, to winning something meaningful. Like, that's just silly."
Like, somewhere in there, like, their arena situation factored in. Like, I don't think it's, like, a big of a deal as some people made it believe, but it just comes down to John Tavares wants to win, and, the Islanders kind of wasting away all of John Tavares' time with, non-winning teams. Like, after 2 years of going to the playoffs, like, they missed the playoffs last year. Like, if they make the playoffs last year, maybe that lingers in, and, like, John Tavares has a little more hope, but they don't. And
maybe if they aren't giving out, 5-year deals to Cal Clutterbuck.
If you're not misusing Nino Niederreiter and trading him for Cal Clutterbuck.
Right.
It just drives me up a tree. Like, the misguided hate at the player, it makes me angry. Like, don't hate the player. Like,
hate the game.
Yeah. Hate the organization that let it get to that point.
Yeah.
So that's what I'll say.
Stop burning jerseys.
Yeah, please. Also, please. This is my least favorite thing in sports now. Like, there's a lot of least favorite things in sports, but this one is starting to take the
list is
cake.
growing.
The burning of the jerseys. Like, why? Like John Tavares was a franchise player, and he has a pretty significant place in Islanders history.
Yeah.
Why are you burning his jersey?
Yeah.
Again, this just fires right back around to the misguided hate, but don't burn the jersey. Like, and this all started when the LeBron James decision happened, and that first jersey burning went viral. Now everyone does it in the hopes that they're famous for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
The thing of it is, we also talked about this before the show, is a lot of these jerseys we're seeing, these are like authentic. These aren't the cheap knockoffs.
Yeah.
Like, these are the authentic ones, the people who have probably invested a lot of time, and it just like, why? Like, I have jerseys at home of players who no longer play for said team. Like,
right.
Would I ever consider burning one? Heavens no. Not for a hot second.
Yeah, as emotional as you might be about it. And I get the emotion. It sucks. But were people burning Marian Gaborik jerseys here when he left? No. I mean, maybe they were.
No, that was before
things went viral. But I mean, just think of how stupid of a reaction that is. And it's no different now. I mean, yes, John Tavares is a better player than Gaborik was, but it's no different now. It's no different. Like, it's the same thing. And here we are. How many years after Gaborik left? And is it okay to wear a Marian Gaborik Wild jersey? Of course it is. He still holds how many team records right now? Like,
yeah.
it harkens back to a time that is fondly remembered by Wild fans because they actually went to a conference final. Like, there's nothing wrong with having a jersey like that. Like, you shouldn't just burn old jerseys from players that leave because it's like you can never wear them again. It's forbidden fruit. Probably don't want to wear it next season, in Brooklyn, but you could definitely, it's good. People are going to get over it eventually.
Before we get to the listener question, forgot to fire this in the free agency part. Old friend Matt Cullen re-signed with the Pittsburgh Penguins on a 1-year deal.
At the ripe
so
age
Matt
of
Cullen
42.
not retiring. Will continue on next year with the Penguins.
Did Daniel Winnick go anywhere yet?
He hasn't
I don't
signed
think
yet.
so.
It's sad Matt Cullen didn't really work out here, but that was what it was, and hopefully he can do some good in Pittsburgh again. But
yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe he's just a locker room guy.
Also, I want to say the worst deal of the day, not even close, as it just gets retweeted into my feed. Antoine Roussel signing a 4-year deal with $3 million cap hit annually with the Vancouver Canucks.
How does Jim
Woof.
Benning have
Woof,
a
woof,
job?
Vancouver
How does he
Canucks
have a
are
job?
atrocious.
Oh my God.
I had to fire that in there. I'm sorry. I'm glad Antoine Roussel's no longer on Dallas, so I don't have to deal with his ass for 5 games a year. But you still get him for 3 games a year with Vancouver, so take that for what it's worth. All right, listener question. We threw it out there. We'll end the show with this. How do you feel about the Minnesota Wild move so far this offseason? The first 2 replies, exactly the same thing. One word, expected. It's courtesy of Ben Mitchum and Scott Semenchuk. I hope I'm saying that right.
Sure.
But then we had a couple of actual answers. A couple of answers that had more than a word.
Good.
From Josh, I think it's solid extra depth, but it doesn't force any of the kids out of spot on this team. And I know you were kind of maybe arguing a little bit to the contrary on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible that it's not the worst thing in the world. I'll start off with saying that, but it's very possible that these signings today, J.T. Brown, Matt Hendricks, Eric Fair, they do hold down. Cunnin and Greenway, I think, are the names that we mostly think of. And we already talked about Panarin holding down Belpidio. Like, that's a thing. So, yeah, I think that you sign depth with the idea that, depth is always a good thing, but if you're giving these guys opportunities, you are taking away opportunities from younger players, and that's just kind of the reality of it. It's not a bad thing in that if you put guys like Cunnin and Greenaway and Belpidio in Iowa and make them play their way out, so to speak, make them earn their promotion, that's not a bad thing either because, they're learning, on the job still. But I don't know. I think it's entirely fair to say that some of these signings can cost playing time for younger players. That's, kind of the purpose of it, I kind of think at the same time.
And the other response we had from Derek G. Johnson, Panarin size we needed on the blue line, kind of obviously what I referenced earlier. Fair has to be better than Winnick. Hammond will be in Iowa. Hendricks is a waste because he's too old, and Brown is the wild card. I'm guessing Brown or Hendricks will be a healthy scratch each night from 4th line.
Yeah, I think Hendricks is kind of already earmarked as that guy. But we'll see. They might have a little bit of a rotation going on, and that's fine. Like Hendricks said, he's there to push younger players and to make them earn their way into the lineup. That's fine. That's fine. If he's making them earn their way into the lineup, that's better than them having a spot and sucking it up, a la, Tyler Ennis, for instance. That's just kind of the situation you want to avoid.
That was a listener question. Thank you for those who
we had one other
chimed
one
in. I almost forgot.
Yeah.
I had the tweet open. I didn't have the
feed.
I didn't have the mentions open.
Gotcha.
It says, yes, hello, I'm here to enter a mailbag question for the podcast. Bike racing as a sport, stupid or terrifying? Also need outfit opinions. This was just a general mailbag question.
Yeah. Yep. I'm going to say stupid. I'm not a racing hater. I'm a race fan of sorts, motor sports racing at least. But cycling seems to be like this weird bastard cousin of the racing world because everyone is doping all the time. Cycling is what everyone thought 90s baseball was. Like, everyone is on steroids. And I don't know. I was talking with my friend about this last night. And I'm sure there's some people that will vehemently disagree, and I've seen people like this on Twitter, but is there ever a time where you're not irritated with bicyclists in the road? No, there isn't. There was a comedian that did a bit about it once. It's I realize that when I'm a pedestrian, I hate every driver of cars, and when I'm a car driver, I hate every pedestrian. But the common thread is no matter what my mode of transportation, I hate bicyclists, and that's just kind of the reality of it. So
I'll say that I do try to give the bikers, space.
Oh, sure, you don't want to
benefit
kill
of the doubt.
anybody.
I just hate it when they're full of themselves and they think they own the whole road. That's what really drives me up a tree.
Or they demand that we build all these bike lanes that no one ever uses. Like, we need bike lanes because, I bike 500,000 miles a year. It's like, well, that's fucking great, dude.
I can't wait for the 35W project that's going on for 3 years to get extended to a 4th year just so they can add a fucking bike lane.
But that's what exactly it is. It's like, okay, so you're literally going to create more traffic for everyone else so you can Lance Armstrong it on the way to, your coffee date or something. Like, it's I don't know. Like, bikes are fine. I don't take any issue with people that ride bikes regularly, but it's just like you're literally infringing on everyone else's, ability to get around, and then you're upset with us for being upset about it. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you have to know that you're infringing on everyone else's traffic, essentially.
All right.
And as far as outfits, I mean the whole skin tight thing, just like
I don't really watch, so I don't really have an opinion.
well,
so
they're like, you have eyes, right? You can see the bicyclists when they're wearing nothing at all.
nothing at all.
Nothing at
all.
If you're biking and you look like stupid sexy Flanders, then I don't know. I mean, I'm happy for you. I don't have a body like that, but I just maybe don't spend so much on spandex.
We were made painfully aware of our body type on Nurses Week.
I forget which one of us was pre-diabetic. It might have been both.
No.
Yeah.
She said both of us. She made sure to say both of us.
I mean, is pre-diabetic, is that just like nurse lingo for fat? Like,
probably.
Yeah. Like, you guys are pre-diabetic. You can say overweight. It's okay. We're painfully aware at this point.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah.
It's the giving up the beer part.
That's just not going to happen.
All right. I can wrap it up for us. We've gone on long enough.
Sure.
But thank you for listening. We have, I think, just one show left this year, and then we get to take our summer holiday.
One or two,
maybe.
We were talking about a second one, but we're not really sure.
We'll see what happens. It really depends on the news. Like, if there's nothing to talk about, then probably not. So we got to have something to talk about that's a little more concrete. And the last few weeks have been a little painful as we've had almost no news to go on. So,
right.
We'll kind of see where it goes. But, yeah, you can follow Ben and I on Twitter at Ben Remington, at Giles Farrell. Podcast Twitter is at GATG Wild Podcast. Follow us iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all that good stuff. So, with that said, we will chat with you again next week.
Later.
It's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.